Oh, do you know from experience?
We also usually show you the house.
We say well, I could see you, and sometimes I try to get your attention. There you see.
Does everyone have papers? Because we can share your papers. Like on the last
Okay.
summer, you can have it.
I'm sorry for the late hour.
Can you start with the first one I gave you? Or do you
Yeah.
have to start with it? And also, tell us why the stars, what do we want to ask? Why weren't the stars idolized like the sun and the moon? Was that the question?
Maybe, yes.
So the stars are not idolized because they're not so
Close.
impressive, not
What's-
individually.
Right.
If at all, they were looked at as zodiac, and they weren't. They
yeah.
weren't.
I don't
The big difference was between the what we call stars and the planets. The planets were idolized. We're not talking about the planets. We're talking about the stars.
Okay.
And the stars, apparently, the reason they weren't idolized is because they weren't viewed as having a soul. What's the difference? That the planets they're called wanderers. Really, I think that's even what it means in Greek. It means a wandering light because they go back and forth. They retract, and it took a very long time until they figured out what the mechanism behind it was. Like at least some theory. And the Greeks already had a theory of why they go backwards, why they travel forwards and then they go backwards. But in the ancient world, in the Babylonian world, it was looked at as if these stars had a soul, as if they knew something, they were doing something, they had freedom of will, they had freedom of movement. But the regular stars, the zodiac itself, which doesn't move, not the planets, but the zodiac, which it just progresses. It goes through the night sky, always following the same speed in the same direction, never going backwards. So the zodiac was seen as more of the mechanism of the universe, the way that we view everything today. To say it another way, is that the more we understand about nature, the less we see it as having will, and more as being a mechanism or a vessel that God is using to rule the world. But for them, the wanderers, the planets, were like they had a mind of their own. So they couldn't see them as being separate. Now the sun, the reason that the sun and the moon, even though the sun and the moon don't go backwards, they always go in the same, they're like the zodiac, they follow the zodiac exactly. Apparently the reason is because of the one thing that they couldn't predict very well, which was eclipses. They knew that eclipses had to happen, at least the lunar eclipses had to happen in a full moon, but they couldn't tell when. So as far as they were concerned, the moon was doing something, or the sun was doing something to the moon. Moreover, that was very clear that the sun was giving life. Like the same way we understand today, that all of the life that we have on the planet is due to the sun. Because without the sun's radiation, there would be no plant life, and from that you can't go up the ladder of life to higher and higher creatures. So in that respect, the planets and the sun and the moon were idolized and were turned into gods, and the zodiac much less so, again because it was very predictable. And the moment something is predictable, it's hard for you to say, well, this is some kind of free-willing being that has some influence on me that is not directly decided upon by something higher than that being. So the zodiac was much more parv in that sense. It's not to say that there weren't people who were so primitive that they couldn't even figure the zodiac out. Meaning they couldn't even figure what was going on, because the zodiac changes over the year. Right? You don't see the same stars. You see the same stars, but you see them rise or set at different hours. Until from the winter to the moon, to the summer, they actually completely switch. That stars that you see in the summer, you can't see in the winter, and vice versa. So there were some that were so primitive they couldn't even figure that one out. But most people could figure that out. As long as you lived a couple of years, you already saw that that's just repeated. So the moment that we have an understanding that things are mechanistic, we don't attribute will to them. And because we don't attribute will to them, so as far as we're concerned, they're just performing Hashem's will. In that sense, that's why it's so important for us to always, if you want to say, assume that Hashem can never be fully understood. Because and also a human being, by the way. The fact that we have a soul, that we have a part of Hashem above, is because we're unpredictable. Or rather, we're unpredictable because we have something that can't fully be mechanized. You can't completely, fully understand it. And we always say that that part of me that I can't fully understand, that's my holiest part. That's the part that's most connected to Hashem. That's the Chelik Elokim Iman. On the other hand, my animal soul, you could say, is very mechanistic. I know what it wants. It wants this, and this, and it always tries to get it. And I spend my life maybe battling it, but it's not that complex a battle. Like in terms of strategically, it is. But I know what it's about. I know where the animal soul wants to go. I know what my shortcomings are. And basically I battle through it my whole life and have to keep doing the same thing. So it doesn't seem so amazing. But when you have a chiddush in Torah, then suddenly you have some new insight. So that's where you see Hashem in your life. That's where you see your divine soul. That's why we're so connected to Torah, because Torah is so infinite in that respect. Talking about it this Shabbos, the Rebbe was fond of saying that the difference between Torah and academic studies is that when it comes to academic studies, you wouldn't take a professor of mathematics to teach children in grade school math. It's a total waste. I mean, this person could be doing something so much more, and just to teach addition, subtraction, multiplication, division just doesn't make any sense. You can take somebody who's in 8th grade and they could teach it. But it's not at all a waste of resources to take the greatest Rav in the world and have him teach 1st grade Bereshis. Because even though you're right that a young man could do it also, but the insight, the way, even what he would gain from teaching the children is worth the time. And that the Rebbe has sichos about that was connected to this week's parsha, La'azhirat ha'gedolim al ha'ktanim. He explains that La'azhirat ha'gedolim al ha'ktanim also means that as great as you might be, around Purim used to repeat this a lot, that as great as you might be, you should spend time teaching little children, like Mordechai did in his yeshiva, and that's what actually saved the Jewish people. Mm-hmm. Mordechai did this in Shushan, Yeshivas Mordechai. So why? Because there's a lot to be gained from it. Because when you're dealing with the divine soul, there's always new insight. There's always something new, some appearance of something that's not mechanistic in the understanding. There are always some insight. That's why the Rebbe was also very encouraging to people to write down their chidushim, to write down whatever new insights came to them, because he valued it. He says that that's the sign that you have a divine soul. That's a sign that we're not just regurgitating and repeating what's been said already. True, it's very hard to say something that nobody ever said, but still, just the fact that you say it yourself, it's a big chiddush.
Wait, there was more to this about the stars. They're revealed.
Right.
And why are they revealed?
So in the future it says that even though the sun and the moon have been the dominant luminaries in our reality, Isaiah uses this, Isaiah was right? It was Isaiah? Somebody will probably help me and tell me what I wrote here on the previous page. So, Isaiah 24:23. So, we're going to look at another prophecy from him today also. So, he says in the future it will suddenly become that the sun and the moon will be secondary, and it will be the stars that will be important. So how can that be? Well, we're not going to live off the light of the stars. So the explanation is that this is a metaphor. He's not trying to describe a new reality in nature. He's trying to describe a new way that human beings relate to the revelation of Hashem. And instead of the sun and the moon being considered the intermediates between us and Hashem, and that they have some kind of personal will, separate will from Him, and therefore they became worthy, as it were, of being worshipped. When it comes to a tzaddik, and the tzaddik and the Jewish people in general are likened to the stars, to the, not the planets, but the stars in the Milky Way and so on. That will become the symbol of connecting to Hashem, the stars and not the sun and the moon. And the big difference being that when a tzaddik is an intermediate, he doesn't sever the connection. He doesn't stand in the middle. He's like Moshe Rabbeinu. He's transparent. He's not even translucent like the other prophets. He's completely transparent. And what you see is what you feel, is what you experience is a direct connection to Hashem. And that's what Isaiah is trying to impress upon us in our understanding. That'll be the state of the future. Okay.
With a free will, we decide who connect with free will.
And obviously there will be a lot of free will for those who are underneath, because they don't feel that there's anything between them and Hashem. There's nothing impinging on that connection. Okay. What we ended with last time is that this is the reason, this whole purging process is the reason that Hashem considered it a tzedakah when Avram believed in him, had faith in him. And let's just read it again. It's line 87. I'm sorry that I don't have page numbers here. It's line 87. I hope that by most people it's the same line 87. It says, this is why God considered Abraham's faith a charity, for he was giving all his power of thought to Hashem, just as one would give charity to the impoverished. So he said, this is not, here Avram did not have mitzvos. We talked about purging as the need to remove from us all the difficult obligations that we have in order to renew ourselves. Abraham didn't even have a single mitzvah back then. If you don't have a single mitzvah, in some ways it's harder to do this than if you do. Because, again, for us it's a relief. It's like going back, resetting the whole system so that we can take upon ourselves the yoke of mitzvahs. Before there are mitzvahs, before Hashem came down on Har Sinai and gave us the Torah, what was the way to connect to Hashem? What is the way today to connect to Hashem? If we didn't have mitzvahs, what would we do? What did Avram have to do?
Right.
So his kidneys.
You have to learn. You have to study the world. Right? If you don't have Hashem coming down to you, you have to elevate to Him. So what are you going to elevate? So some people say, maybe I'll go up on a high mountain. So, nice, but I don't know if that helps so much. What you have to do is you have to elevate the way a human being elevates, and that's to develop your thought, to develop your understanding of reality, to develop your understanding of other people, seeing how Hashem is revealed through other people. If you purge all that, all your knowledge, all your thoughts, all your understanding, and you have no mitzvahs to go back to, so in a certain sense, you've thrown the ladder that you've been climbing up to Hashem and thrown it aside and said, okay, so...
It's just an intellectual exercise.
It's more... I'm even giving up the intellectual. I'm giving up everything that I've accomplished. And Avram accomplished a great deal. He was a great scholar. He studied all the different religions. He knew everything. And then he says, I'm throwing this all away, and I'm only going to live on simple faith. So that's considered a charity. By us, it's not so much a charity, but by him, it was tremendously a charity, because it was like giving up everything that you had worked for in order to have some connection with Hashem. Where does the connection with Hashem come from? It comes from the perception that you have, from some kind of understanding. It's throwing all that out. And even, and this is the hardest thing for him, the one time that Hashem did reveal himself to him and told him that when you come to Eretz Yisrael, you'll have offspring, and I'll make you into a nation. And he says, and he's throwing that out also. He says, however Hashem you want it to be is good for me. I don't understand you. I'm throwing all my knowledge away. Plus, whatever, not mitzvah that you gave me, but what you promised me that you would do, I'm also putting that aside. I'm clearing that out of my head. I have no expectations. Everything is good. However it'll be good. So that's considered.
Did Abram decide to do this and why?
It's a sacrifice. It's a tremendous sacrifice.
At what point?
Oh, this is just after the Brit Ben Abtarim, the covenant of the shards. Just after that, he ve'emin b'Hashem v'chshaveh lo tzedakah. This is after Lech Lecha. According to Rashi and according to the different opinions, this happened actually before he came to Eretz Yisrael. This actually happened when he was 70, and when he was 75, that's when Lech Lecha happened. But that's Drush. In the pshat of the Chumash, this happens after Yishmael is born, when he's 86.
Also, he also gave up Shema.
No, he didn't give him up so easily. He said, since it's not going to be offspring from me and Sarah, so Lu Yishmael Yicheh Lefanecha. So would it be that Yishmael would also be God-fearing, and then I would be content with that? So he's not giving him up so easily, but he's giving up what he was promised, which was that from him and Sarah would come the nation. So that's considered a charity. By us, it's not so much a charity, because to give our thoughts over to Hashem, we don't have a problem, because we run, right? We purge, we empty ourselves, and what we're left with is Hashem coming down. And essentially, that's exactly the process. That the moment that you clean yourself, you purge yourself of all your conceptions, understandings, and so on, Hashem, who's already come down once on Har Sinai, continues to come down to you. And he gives you the mitzvahs the moment that you come out of that state. It's like you get that ready-made. You don't have to go through the whole process that Avram went through of so many generations, 7 more generations until he receives the mitzvahs. Okay, so that's basically the end of of chapter 1 here. Just one more thought at the end, which ties into the beginning of chapter 2. Immediately after doing so, after purging and saying, I only have belief in Hashem, faith in Hashem, Abraham asked God, how will I know that I will indeed inherit the land of Canaan? In order to cling to his faculty of confidence, as will be explained. So, a lot of times this is seen as something negative, that Abraham now asks, how will I know that I will inherit the land? To know is the flip side of to have faith. Right? We have Keter and we have Dat. And Keter is the super conscious connection to Hashem. And Dat, consciousness and knowledge, is to be connected to Hashem in things that are concrete, that you understand, that you feel, that you sense. It's the opposite of faith. So comes Avram and says, now that I've been up there, and you've even taken me, he says, he takes him above the zodiac, right? He takes him above the stars, so that he can have only faith in Hashem as running everything, and purging out even his understanding. That's the image, basically. He takes him above the stars. He says, stop thinking about what was called in the ancient world, the astrology. And it's one statement I think I once quoted it here in these classes. I read it once. The biggest historian of ancient science was a guy by the name of Lynn Thorndike, and he writes. He has a monumental 8-volume work called "The History of Magic and Technology." It's considered it's old. It's already from the 40s and 50s, but it's still considered the main work. And so he starts it by explaining. He says people don't understand how powerful astrology was until the 19th century. That was the laws of nature. Those were there was nothing else. It's tagninut. means this is your frame of mind. That's how you think. And until the 19th century, that's how people thought. The remnants today are like, again, because we understand today that we understand how they work, the stars and the zodiac and everything, so it's kind of silly. And even if it does anything, so you understand it's just nature. So nobody thinks it has a mind, nobody thinks it decides anything. If anything, it's reflecting some other plan that was set in place by something higher. So really the astrology that we have today is not the astrology that they had back then, but they understood that astrology, the stars define everything that happens in your life. So Hashem takes him above that. He purges, he helps him purge. It's a symbol of him purging all that type of understanding from him, understanding that if you're going to give birth, it's from a higher source. It's not from these laws. That's the faith. But now he's coming back down into the world. When he comes back down into the world, he says, in this world, you don't work by faith. And that's what we're getting into in chapter 2. You work with confidence. You work with trusting in Hashem. It's completely different that way. It comes out of your knowledge of Hashem, not out of your faith in Hashem. And so he's asking, but how will I know that I will inherit the land, the physical land here, not my mind? My mind's already clean, it's okay. But how now do I do actions that will change reality, not just my own inner reality? And for that he's setting up the coming of what we described in the early classes, of this line of infinite light that enters into reality and begins to create a world inside. It begins to create what we would call a change in reality. That's the confidence. That's what we call the confidence. Okay? So, let's continue with chapter 2. Just as pure faith is the power to purge one's psyche from all alien thoughts, so the faculty of strong confidence in God is the power that fills the psyche with constantly improving content. This is the line that comes down and brings infinite light into the psyche. That's why it's consciousness already, it's dat. The word confidence itself in Hebrew is etymologically related to the act of plastering walls, coating them with plaster, as in the verse in Plaster the House, V'tach et habayit, and you will plaster the house. So to plaster something is like to strengthen it. It's like to make it stable. So basically, what's the image? The image that we discussed in the beginning from the Arizal is like that the line comes down, and every time it comes down, it draws another world. That's like the plastering that it does. It creates a new reality, a strong, tough reality that can stand.
Does that go back to this?
Right. Exactly. Except here we didn't show the worlds that are created as the line descends, because it's too
The line
complex.
comes down.
So as the line, no, not further down. From the top,
Yeah.
as it comes down, every little step it takes, it creates another circle, another sphere, another sphere. These are abstract ideas. They're not really creating some kind of circle, creating a reality. As the confidence, as a person's confidence guides, as we'll see, his will, so he creates worlds in his life. He creates realities in his life. Confidence appears as both passive confidence in the sphere of acknowledgement, hod, and as active confidence in the sphere of victory, netzach. Acknowledgement and victory are connoted confidences in Tehillim. That's what they call batuchot chokhmah. Okay, so here we need to begin to understand this. That there's two ways to create a reality. There's confidence that's active, that says I have certain capabilities. For instance, I decide to write something. So I have an ability to type, I have an ability to express myself. And so I sit at the computer and I start typing, I start writing. I'm trusting my ability to complete the task, to get to the goal that I want to get to. That's called active confidence. I have the instruments, I have the tools I have the ability to make this into a reality. That's active confidence. Passive confidence is when I don't have the ability. And so we have to divide these two into two different faculties in the soul. And so we divide them between the netzach and the hod, between victory and acknowledgement. And what are these in the body? In the body, they're the right foot and the left foot. Netzach is the right foot, hod is the left foot. But they're also, more importantly, they ascend into the body itself. And so they're related, both in the male and the female, to the procreative organs. But as you go higher, and this is the picture in ancient medicine, they go all the way up to the kidneys. There's still the left and the right, but they're under the, what do you call it, sarefet, the diaphragm, under the diaphragm. So it goes all the way up to the diaphragm. The diaphragm is the symbol of where Tiferet is. What's this area? This is what we call gird your loins, which is stand. It's like the center of your mass. It's where confidence comes from.
Pilates was built on this boat.
What?
Pilates, right?
I don't know.
It's a person.
What is this?
It's an exercise, but it's a man that developed.
I thought it was
reformed
just yoga.
because after World War II, it's really reforming. It used to do it on a reformer, and it's all around the core. I don't know much about
Okay.
it, but if that's how they understood the
Okay.
body, then.
This is the center of mass, and if you learn how to manipulate it, that's how all the martial arts work. It's basically working with your center of mass versus your opponent's center of mass, and that's where all the confidence comes from, the ability to change things. And there's what you would call, even there, physically, active confidence and passive confidence. Active confidence would be, I have the strength to push you because I have my center of mass giving me all that I need.
This is to
Passive confidence, so this would be,
this whole area.
so this, until the diaphragm is tiferet. Below where the center of mass is, right, up to here, it's 1/3 of the body. From the top of my head to my navel is 1/3 of the body. From there down, where the diaphragm is, about the same height, that's the bottom 2/3. And the bottom 2/3 is only 4 sfirot. Really it's 3, but Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. Really from the bottom 2/3 is really only 3 sfirot. Everything else is higher up. It's sort of like the earth, same thing. If you look at the earth, these things repeat themselves in different places. You see that 2/3 of the land mass on earth is above the equator. Only 1/3 of the land mass is under the equator. So we see the same thing in the sfirot. 2/3 of the sfirot are above the diaphragm, and 1/3 are below. So the 1/3 that are below, the Netzach and Hod and Yesod, Malchus is really not a sphera in the body. It's sort of this whole thing together. Let's say the whole center of mass together, or the exact point of the center of mass. Different ways of seeing it. In the female form, it's usually considered to be the womb, so it's actually higher up. In the male form, it's not so clear where it is. It's probably the female. It's a little bit more complex. But the thing that you get from here is that you have active confidence, which is I can throw you, and passive confidence, which is I have no ability. I'm too small to throw you. I don't have the ability to throw you down, but what I have is the ability to shift your center of mass so that you throw yourself down. Okay? You're going to do it for me. From Hod, passive confidence, that I'm in control of the situation enough not to exercise my own power because I don't have any, but I can exercise your power.
Like when he went to sleep when the war was
Right.
won.
So that's what we're going to talk about today, a little bit more deeply. So here it's not in terms of an opponent, it's more in terms of Hashem. Who is going to do? Is it going to be me doing confidence, self-confidence, which is victory, which is netzach? Or is it going to be confidence in Hashem doing, which is Hod. And Hod itself, in the Gematria, is Yud Kei. It's the first two letters of Hashem's name, and it's a feeling of Hashem doing. And Netzach is equal to Menachem. It's like saying that it's like being a king. And Menachem is the name of the Mashiach. So it's like the ability to do things myself. So am I self-reliant? That's like victory. That's active confidence. That's my right side. Or am I passively reliant on Hashem, and He will do? And a lot of the delicate balance here is to recognize when I'm able or not able to do something, and yet, even though I'm not able to do it, to still trust Hashem that He will do it. To have passive confidence, to have passive trust in Hashem, that He will do what I can't do. So, the two extremes are called the confidences. They're represented by the two kidneys. I always used to wonder why they would say that. If you ever watch a boxing match, which I had an opportunity to do a few times, so they have this thing, you get a jab to the kidneys, or you get a punch to the kidney. That's what they call it. And I always wonder, why is that so? Who cares? Why is it? They don't say you get it to the lungs. They don't even say you get it to the heart. But about the kidneys, they're under the ribs. Anyway, so there's a lot of it going on in the anatomy. I'm not such a big expert in it. But in ancient Hebrew, they were called confidences. Batuchot, meaning that, yeah, batuchot, that's their name. And it means that that you trust in them. I don't know what the word loin means, but I'm guessing that it has something also to do with trust or confidence in oneself.
Don't they use it all the time more in the parsha for your loins? Is it more than that, getting ready for war?
Le'ezol chalatzav, it's called. Like chalatz is like the part that's revealed, like but like lachalot znal, to take off a shoe. So it's like revealed. There's nothing here. There's no ribs anymore. But it's also chalutz. Like a chalutz is somebody who runs in front of the army. He's the pioneer.
Who runs in front of the tanks.
Right. He's a chalutz. Like Reuven and Menashe, that they went before the rest of the people to conquer the land. So there's this. On the one hand, you're open. On the other hand, you have a tremendous amount of confidence, meaning you're not protected, you're not behind. There's nothing shielding you. On the other hand, you're running forward. It goes together. They go together, one with the other. Chilutz atzamot, for instance. It's like to like feel that you're standing well. You feel strong. That you feel healthy. Chilutz atzamot. Okay. So passive confidence is the subject of the Baal Shem Tov saying, "Think good and it will be good."
That's passive.
Okay, because all you need to do is think. But it is not enough to believe that it will be good. You have to actually think. Meaning that your mind is not purged. It's not empty. There's not only faith. But there's an active thought here. And what does it mean? It means picturing the result that you want. And this the Rebbe talked about all the time.
And not in the window.
Right. Because I'm affecting reality. I'm not pulling away from reality. I'm not ascending up higher and divorcing myself from the situation here. I'm investing myself again in reality, but I'm doing it only with my thought.
And this is passive confidence.
Relatively speaking, we're here in passive confidence.
But it's still bitachon.
But it's a type of bitachon. It's bitachon savil, it's called.
So you're saying it's
Passive.
not
It's not transcending, it's not detaching.
Right. It's not detaching from reality. On the contrary, I'm very worried about, I'm very involved in what's going on, but I recognize that I don't have the tools, I don't have the ability to change it right now. I can't do anything. So this is a little tricky here because it's not completely passive. Like, what would be completely passive? Go to sleep. Right? What's the first? Especially if you had a parent, I didn't, but friends of mine did. You have a parent who was a doctor. You would know this. So what's the first aid the doctor always gives his children? What's the first thing you need to do if you don't feel well? All parents know this. Go to sleep. Why? Because it heals. But you need to go to sleep knowing or imagining or thinking that when I wake up I'll be okay.
What's completely active?
Completely active is like King David. When he goes out to war, he says, Hashem, sit aside. I don't need your help.
But how many other people are there like that?
Said we'll talk a lot more about this. Where does a person get the goal?
Right.
Which also is another connection to confidence.
Gallbladder.
Because where's the goal? It's in the same place.
Uh-huh.
It comes from the same area. Okay? That's where your power comes from. So where do you get the goal to say to Hashem, just don't interfere? I don't need you. It's a dialogue with Hashem. You're not ignoring Hashem. King David doesn't ignore Hashem. He says, I know, but I want. It's like a child telling his father, don't catch me, don't catch the bike. Let me do it. I need to do it myself.
Well, that might be a good idea anyway.
What?
Don't catch the bike.
Okay, let me fall down if I need to fall down, but I have to do it myself. Right? Okay. But at some point you understand, you have to say to Hashem, like, why don't we say that? We'll learn later. Why we have a problem? Why David was the only one who was able to do
Yeah,
this?
Bar Kokhba said that. That wasn't very
What?
good. Told God to stay out of it, right?
Who?
Bar Kokhba?
Al Kokhba, right. That was the incorrect way
Yeah.
of doing
You
it.
said after King David, no one
Right.
else can say that.
Almost, I guess. Well,
Or shouldn't?
I certainly can't. So we'll see. But there are 4 kings from King David's lineage who, in the Gemara, they represent the lessening of the generations when it comes to active confidence, meaning the inability to act like their progenitor. And he was the first one who was able to do things entirely by saying to Hashem, let me do it myself. I don't want you to help me.
What was he trying to prove?
He wasn't trying to prove. He was trying to create a reality. And he knew that the only reality that will really stand is the one that we do, as it were, by ourselves.
For himself or for the people?
For the people, for everybody. He wants to show what it means to be self-reliant. He says, you can't come to Hashem, you come to Hashem, but in the end Hashem wants you to do, otherwise he wouldn't have created you.
Ishtadlus.
Okay? And the Ishtadlus has to be complete by King David. Meaning complete means 100% is done by me. Of course the very fact that I'm alive is you.
Yes.
But once you gave me the abilities, I want to use them to my fullest potential. I don't. So he shows a way because he's the king. But
Doesn't
as
Hashem
we'll
like
see,
King
this is
David something special.
What?
King David, right? Hashem loves King David something
okay.
special.
So just
It has to be
say
that
exactly.
person.
As we'll see, this is related to being cleansed of any kind of avera, any kind of sin. That you can't do this if you have a feeling that there is some kind of negativity lurking inside that you haven't fixed yet. Meaning, really, this is a process of tshuva. It's very deep. It's like that to be able to be 100% self-reliant, you have to be completely cleansed of anything wrong. You have no wrongdoing, and if you have an even concealed negativity inside, you won't be able to be completely self-reliant. You will need Hashem. So for him, it's an exercise. It's how to teach people not to be self-reliant for the purpose of being self-reliant. But being self-reliant is the process, or gaining self-reliance is a process by which you cleanse yourself of any nefesh be'emit that you have inside. That's what we mean when we say that he shechted his Yetzer Hara. This,
Action. Isn't that another way of discussion? And is that
So, we'll see. We'll get to it. It's a long discussion.
Be in Shiblut if he's in Netzach.
We said that Malchus here has something to do with it, but it's a little bit too complex for right now. We have to still build this slowly. Okay. So passive confidence is the subject of Baal Shem Tov saying, think good, tracht gut, wird sein gut. It is not enough to believe that it will be good without my input. One must think good. You have to do something. But what you're doing is not something active. One example of this is that in the Amida prayer, when we say he heals the sick of his people, Am Yisrael, and he blesses the years, whatever bracha we say, we must have absolute confidence that what we are saying is not an empty blessing, and that indeed God does what we describe him as doing. So all I did was I thought it, I said it. But that's the act I do. That's all I can do. All I can do is say that Hashem is blessing the year. He's blessing the parnasa. He's healing the sick. He's forgiving all our sins. All I do is I just say it. I just think it. The result is that's what he wants from me. A person would say, well, what kind of thing is this? You say he forgives all of our iniquities, and you say he blesses the years. Well, how does that oblige him? It doesn't. That's the whole point. The Amida is an exercise in what we call passive confidence. That's what we're trying to do. Passive confidence means, what's the sign? Everybody knows from the Rebbe. That once you say this, you're certain. There's no other possibility. That once you said, Hashem forgave all my averos, that's it, that's a reality. Once I said, Hashem heals the sick, that's the only reality possible. Again, that's a process also of tshuva. This we talked about in different, because I'm fond of repeating this. I repeat it to myself every day 1,000 times. So I once in a while repeat it to other people. That there was a person who was sick, and the Rebbe wrote to him that it'll be fine, everything will be good. And then a few days later, he writes to the person again, and he says, "But I saw you in a Farbrengen or on the street, wherever you saw him." And he said, "I saw that your face is not the face of somebody who's just been told that everything will be fine. You're very worried, and this is not the way to have confidence." En ze bitachon b'Hashem. This is not what we call having bitachon in Hashem. Because when a person has bitachon in Hashem, even if it's passive confidence, because that's all Hashem gave you, He didn't give you any other instrument right now to do, he walks around very happy. Because he knows that the goal will be attained. And if I told you, says the Rebbe, he says there, that you'll be fine, you'll be fine. Have passive confidence at least. So the person wrote back and he said, well, what can I do that I believe you, Rebbe, but I don't believe in myself? Meaning that maybe I have averos, that because of that I won't be worthy of your blessing. So the Rebbe wrote him back and he said, if you in this difficult situation will have confidence that Hashem will heal you, that itself is the tshuva for all the averos that you did.
Wow.
So it's the same thing, same idea. Whether you get to active confidence like David, King David, or you get to passive confidence like Trach Gut Wird Sein Gut, it's the same process of what does it mean to purge yourself here in this case of all your evil, of all that's negative inside. So we need these, the confidence. So now somebody asks, well, how is this related to the kidneys? So now it becomes clear, what do the kidneys do?
Detox.
They detox the body. So it becomes clear why they're related one to the other. Again, how much did they understand in ancient medicine that the kidneys were related to the level of toxicity of the blood and so on? They understood. Not like we understand. They didn't know chemistry the way we understand, but they knew at some level that when a person loses a kidney, people lost kidneys, it wasn't unheard of, or something that's very common, for whatever reason, I don't know, but in the Gemara there's a lot of examples of it, of an animal being able to live without a kidney for some amount of time, but they die from poisoning, and they saw it. It's a different thing to see a person die or an animal die from poisoning than it is from a heart attack. Heart attack, the person looks fine one day, and then he's pale and he passes away. But when you lose a kidney or you lose 2 kidneys and they don't function, poisoning looks very, very different. You see it, and it's a long process. It's not something that happens overnight. Today they scare people that have low kidney functions. You're going to pass away. If you don't do dialysis, you're going to pass away in 3 months. I don't know. Takes a long time. It could take years, depending on the level of functioning. But even at 5%, if the kidneys are only functioning at 5%, it still takes years. It takes a year, 3 years. It depends on the person. Okay. In any case, so they saw this. Spiritually, what this relates to is the toxicity is what I'm carrying around due to my iniquities. I have some, and it's concealed. It's in my blood. It's my averot, or my yetzer hara. So David HaMelech, he cleansed himself so fully from all the averos that he had, that his self-confidence was so great that he says to Hashem, for me to develop my full self-confidence, you have to step aside. Don't get involved. Let me do everything. But as you get weaker and weaker, so the most weakened, and who's the one person who's sick, and who's I wanted to get to him this week, but I don't know if we'll get. I don't know what time it is. I don't know how much time we still have. But Chizkiah, his great-great-grandson, so he already says, I don't know how to do anything. And here, this is what I want to get into this already because it's so connected to this time of year. Because apparently, I haven't been able to research this enough, but apparently the biggest miracle since the Exodus was the Assyrian army that suddenly perished overnight when they came to attack Yerushalayim. And this is an incredible story. What's the story behind this? Assyria had already conquered the northern kingdom. They were the empire, the northern empire that everybody was afraid of. And they came against Shomron, which was the capital. We've talked about this many times, that Yerushalayim as the capital of the Jewish people didn't work so well. So David made it his capital, but there was no temple yet. There's no Beis HaMikdash yet. And then Shlomo built it. It took him 7 years. And Shlomo reigned for 40 years. So altogether, he finished it in his 14th year, so it was 26 years between when Shlomo finished the temple and when Shlomo died. And then, very soon after Shlomo died and his son Rechavam took over, the kingdom split into 2. And the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes in the north, they made their capital in Shomron, and they built 2 temples. If you guys have 1, we'll have 2. Obviously, these were not. They didn't think, by the way, that they were doing something wrong. Maybe they knew it in some level, but they saw it as, you think you're going to tell us how to worship Hashem, how to serve Hashem? We have all the signs in the world that the temple should be in Beitel, which is where Yaakov had his dream, according to the Pshat of the Torah, in this place called Beitel. That was one place. And then they had another place up north that also fit some of the descriptions. And they built 2 temples there. And they worshipped there. They never came to Yerushalayim because the 2 kingdoms were separated. So you have to understand, what do you mean separate? It's not that they didn't have any connection, but it was a big, like 2 Hasidim. That shul I never done. So, Baruch Hashem, today it's just that shul. Back then it was mamish. What they did was, in retrospect, mamish avodah zarah. It's really avodah zarah. But in their mind, you have to. I'm not the only one who says this. Shea says this a lot about them. That they're just a belligerent son. they're not doing it because they really believe in it. It's just because they're angry at Yehuda because the king there is not the king that we wanted. He's too right wing. It's not for us. We want a left wing guy. So he's our king, and we'll have our own set of laws and things and worship and so on.
But they didn't have the Torah,
They did, because they didn't study it, and they came up with their understanding. The whole way of studying Torah back then was not like what had happened in the Second Temple. It's not like Chazal. It's prophecies. So they had their prophets. They were false prophets, but they didn't know 100%. Some of them knew, some of them didn't know. They were prophets. You have to understand, prophecy is the early form of thinking above the rational. How do you think above the rational, or how do you think rationally, or I don't know exactly. But it's like you're inspired to say some poetry, and it becomes meaningful to people. So they built their own thing, and then there were prophets, real prophets, that kept telling them, "You'll be destroyed." Why? Not because you left Yerushalayim behind. That's not the main reason. The main reason is because you added so much avodah zarah, idolatry, into your temples, into everything, that it can't be suffered anymore. So who destroyed them? Assyria, Ashur. And a few years after they destroyed the northern kingdom, they came for Yerushalayim. What did Chizkiyahu, who was the king at the time, want to do? Probably what most of us would think of doing. He wanted to go get an alliance and an army from the south, from Egypt. The other great empire at the time was Egypt. So he's stuck in the middle. He says, if I can't beat Assyria, I'll bring the Egyptians. So that's where Yeshaya's prophecy starts from, the one that we're going to look at, and it's smack dab in the middle of his book. And this is the prophecy where he describes not what happened, but what will happen. Meaning he tells Chizkiyahu, and he tells the Judean people, the southern kingdom, don't make an alliance with Egypt, because Hashem promises you, then he repeats it a number of times in prophecies after that, and then afterwards he describes everything that happened, but this is a prophecy where he prophesizes this is what will happen, and Assyria will not destroy the city. They won't be able to. What actually ended up happening, that the Assyrian army amassed around Yerushalayim. They had apparently 160,000 people, and Chizkiah, and again, I don't know if this is an actual event or this is how it's described metaphorically, but he couldn't do anything, and he went to sleep. And when they wake up in the morning, the entire Assyrian army is dead, and the only person that escaped, according to everybody, is Nebuchadnezzar, the person who would ultimately destroy the temple. But he's a Babylonian, so he's like a.
You described it to us in earlier class that he knew he wasn't a warrior, so he knew he didn't.
Right, right. He didn't have the
Had
ability.
he been a different
Right.
type of person,
Oh. So now, what does it mean to be a warrior? So when we think about what does it mean to be a warrior, like what does King David do? He takes the sword himself and he chops off everybody's head? Or is he the commander? What is he? Which one do you understand him as? He's a leader. You understand him as a leader. You don't understand him as being the person who actually has to go into the battle and...
Dude, why not?
Oh.
But he did.
Has the blood on his
Yeah.
hands.
Oh, exactly. So this is what it means, active confidence. It's not, active confidence means that I myself, with my two hands, am going to win this war. I'm going into the battle. I'm not commanding it from behind. I'm going into it. And from me, people will learn how to kill and how to win. And I'm not afraid of anything that's happening on this battlefield. It's all mine. That's active confidence at the highest level, where even your body you're not afraid will come
It's
to
like
harm.
Ari Foot.
What?
Like Ari Foot. The lion.
Okay, he's a superhero,
Right.
basically. He's like a guy who has no boundaries, who feels that he can single-handedly defeat an entire army. Meshiggah. Who fights like that? Nobody fights like that. That's crazy confidence.
But didn't he need permission from Hashem? Although he,
So the permission is that he feels the confidence.
wow.
That's what we said, that he's so cleansed of all sin that he feels that I can do this. Obviously, people come with him. He's not the only one going into battle. But I think we explained this last time, that after Avram had done something similar by chasing the 4 kings, then comes in the Torah the story that he purges everything, meaning that he was so invested in the world with confidence that he felt that maybe that was what Hashem meant, that he would change reality. Maybe this was it. So Hashem has to say to him, I'm protecting your reward very much, meaning that you haven't yet received the reward that I promised you. And then he sees the vision of the covenant between the shards, and that's when he has his faith in Hashem. So really, what he was purging was the investment he had made in the war with the 4 kings. So that's just to explain that.
What are we talking about? Oh, so the difference.
So David, he's so engrossed in this battle that as far as he's concerned, everybody that comes with him is just an afterthought. They're just following him. But he's like a superhero. He's able to, and he has no fear, nothing. He's able to do all this.
That's why those who thought that they had sinned didn't go to battle.
נכון,
They had to go
נכון,
back
נכון,
home.
נכון, right, exactly. האיש הירא ורך הלבב, which means literally that he's afraid of his averos.
And he died.
Okay. So I don't want, if you're so afraid, not enough active confidence, go back and daven, passive confidence. But you can't go into the battle itself. Okay, so we need to end. So I don't know. We'll continue this next week. What is the lowest level? What does the sages say? He says, Chizkiah, how could he have done something active? What was the active thing he could have done like his predecessor? He had a predecessor who did the active thing, which is one level up, to sing, to say Shira. So everybody thinks it's to sing. What's the problem with sing? You can't sing? No. So we'll see from Isaiah's prophecy that to sing is not just to sing, it's to conduct. He was afraid to get on top of the podium and to conduct the Levim when they sing. That's the lowest level of active confidence, or which becomes actually passive confidence already, that you have nothing to do. Because to be able to get on stage, you can't sing yourself and you don't play the music yourself, but you have to conduct it. And you even didn't make the music, somebody else wrote it.
What's that mean?
To conduct is lenatzeach in Hebrew.
That's why in the songs they keep saying conductor.
Okay.
Having
Organization skills?
Well, it's not just organization in the sense that I know how to, but it's to be able to control.
music.
Again, what does David feel? David feels this whole battlefield is mine.
Okay.
There's nobody else here.
Right?
It's me, and a conductor doesn't feel that there's nobody else here. But he feels that he has enough, call it clout, he has enough say
To do what?
that
Find
people will
find
follow
the
him.
best fighter and send him in.
Exactly. The way that a general does today.
Right.
And he doesn't actually have to go out and do it because maybe he's too old already. He can't chop off people's heads. He
He's not
can't.
reprimanded for any of this, Miskio, is he?
No, he misses it. He doesn't become Mashiach.
Oh.
Meaning that if he would have, what it's saying is that to be Mashiach is to go one step above the passive confidence that you're capable of, just to get to some level of activity.
It seems like he knew
Again, to
himself.
move from Hod into Netzach. from being completely passive, going to sleep, to doing just the next thing that his predecessor Yehu did do, which is to conduct the Levim. That's all. So the verse that we're going to look at much more next week is here. It's Pasuk 29. Let's see it. This is, why is this related to this time of year? Because this pasuk captures this whole time of year, the whole Sfiras Omer. Let's see this, 29.
Where?
Verse 29. So
Oh,
if you're watching a video, which we're not, but if you are, so this is Isaiah chapter 30, and it's verse 29. And in Hebrew it reads, Ashir yeh lechem kelel yitkadesh chag,
He took it.
ושמחת לבב כהולך בחליל לבוא בהר הוויה אל צור ישראל. What is it describing? The song, I'll read it in my translation, not the way you translate, will be for you like the night on which the holiday, the festival, is hallowed, consecrated, made holy. And the joy of your heart will be like the person walking with the flute on his way to the mountain of Hashem to see the Eternal of Israel. What is he talking about? The night on which the festival is consecrated, that's Erev Pesach. We even say it. Hashir yeh lechem kelel yitkadesh chag. This is a pasuk that's in the Agada even. V'simchat levav, and the joy of your heart, keolech bechalil, and the joy of your heart will be like the person carrying the flute, singing or playing it as he walks up to the mountain of Hashem. That's Shavuos. Why? Because that's when the bikurim are brought. The first fruit are brought up to the temple on the mountain of Hashem. What's supposed to happen between the first night of Pesach and Shavuos?
Omer.
The Sfiras Omer. What do you do in the Sfiras Omer? You're cleansing yourself of all the hidden negativity that's in you. And so it causes you joy of the heart. It's like you're moving from passive confidence. What happened in Mitzrayim? We couldn't do anything. Hashem had to do everything. Hashem yilachem lachem v'atem tachal rishuni. You couldn't do anything. You're completely passive. But then on the seventh day, it's already Nachshon jumping into the water. And as you move forward until you come to receive the Torah, what do you have to have? Tremendous confidence. They didn't have confidence. So what happened? So when it started with all the fireworks and everything that happened when the Torah was being given, they ran away. Moshe Rabbeinu had to bring them out, telling them it'll be okay. Because that's a moment of active confidence. You need active confidence that you can do this. They had some of it because it said Naseh v'nishma. Naseh v'nishma is a statement of tremendous confidence that I can perform this. It's all related to this time of the year when we cleanse out all the negativity and we move from being passively confident on the first night of Pesach to being actively confident on Shavuos. And then it says, and I'm skipping to verse 32, and this is the verse that we'll see next week much more. והיה כל מעבר מטה מוסדה אשר יניח הוויה עליו בתופים ובכינורות ובמלחמות תנופה נלחם בם. So this is very hard to explain. What is it? Verse 32. What is it saying? It's describing a war. And it's called the War of Tnufa. It says here, and will do battle with him as he waves it. Waves what?
Omer.
The Omer is the right answer. But by Chizkiah, what he's telling to him is, what are you supposed to be waving? The flag. The baton. The conductors. Okay. That's literally what he was. Milchemet Nufa is on many levels. Milchemet Nufa means a war where you are the one who's actively engaging the enemy. literally. Tnufa is like to rush forward. Everything that has to do with the word tnufa is related to wind, to something rushing. So there's all kinds of levels. The lowest level, what he's saying here to Chizkiyahu, is you will have to conduct something here. It's to make the violins and all the pieces of the orchestra play together. You're going to have to at least be a leader. That's what it means to say shira. To say shira, to make songs. It's not just to sing; it's to conduct.
Is this what usually happened during the war?
Okay.
Between was
That's why. What did they used to have in wars? They don't do this anymore because you don't need it really. But they used to have, like in drummers and flutists and bagpipes in Scotland and all kinds of. But all the armies in the world used the elements of music to conduct the war because they're the same thing. Menatzeach is a conductor, and Menatzeach is a victorious person.
So they came to the. Oh, they
So
were
that's
sitting
what,
there.
okay. And they even sang in the middle, okay? And there's all, and that's what the Kohen does. It's all like you see it as an extension of the avoda in the mikdash. And so he says, if you don't know how to conduct the levim here at the temple, so Hashem can't make it. That's the minimum that you need to do to move from passive confidence into active confidence. Okay, so we'll talk much more about this.
For knowing himself?
What?
Shouldn't he be praised for knowing?
He won the war, but not of his own doing.
Where did we learn that he's reprimanded or he did something wrong? Where is he? Right here, and you.
He told him, this is what you're going to have to do.
Wait, you took mine.
Say again.
When you're unpredictable, you can go farther.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right?
It just seems like he knew himself, though.
No, exactly.
No, but
What you
he
say is
didn't know that he was
to be
unpredictable.
Mashiach is to
I
believe that you
recognize
have a divine soul that can do more than what
So
you think you can do.
Did he not believe he was Mashiach?
Apparently, he didn't have the active confidence, only the passive. So only passive, that's not Mashiach. There has to be some level of active confidence. And you only need a little bit more than what you have right now. To reveal your Yechida, to reveal your part in Mashiach, is to reveal that little bit more. So we'll talk more about this next.
This whole